Your iPhone has a secret. It's deliberately holding back its power, throttling its performance to keep from overheating. This means fewer frames per second in your games and even lag when you're just scrolling through your feed. It's a safety measure, sure, but it's also a bottleneck that holds your phone back from what it could be. When your phone gets too hot, its performance suffers. The processor slows down, apps can crash, and over time, that heat is silently killing your battery. But what if Apple could finally solve this? What if they could remove that bottleneck for good? Persistent rumors suggest a new type of liquid cooling system is coming to the iPhone. Today, we're going to explore what that could mean by imagining a series of demanding tests to see if this tech could really take the iPhone to the next level. Section 1. The problem and the hypothesis. The core of the issue is something called thermal throttling. Every smartphone deals with it. When you're doing something intense, playing a high-end game, editing 4K video, a long FaceTime call, your iPhone's processor works incredibly hard, which generates a ton of heat. Since a phone is a tiny, sealed box with no fans, that heat has nowhere to go. To protect the components, your iPhone intentionally slows down the processor to let things cool off. That's thermal throttling, and you feel it as stuttering gameplay, longer export times, and a phone that just feels sluggish. For years, Apple has used layers of graphite and metal to spread the heat out, but that's a passive solution that can only do so much. This brings us to the rumored solution: vapor chamber liquid cooling. This isn't like the complex water cooling you see in gaming PCs. A vapor chamber is a very thin, sealed copper enclosure containing a tiny bit of liquid. When the processor gets hot, this liquid absorbs the heat and instantly vaporizes. That hot vapor rapidly fills the chamber, moving the heat away from the processor. As it reaches cooler areas, it condenses back into a liquid, releasing the heat so it can dissipate through the phone's frame. This whole cycle happens passively and continuously, with no moving parts. In theory, this is way more efficient than what iPhones currently use. The rumors are swirling that this is exactly the technology Apple is exploring for the upcoming iPhone 17 Pro models. The question is, would it actually work as advertised? Could it eliminate thermal throttling and deliver consistent peak performance? Section 2. The hypothetical test setup. So, let's imagine a controlled experiment to see what kind of a difference this could make. On one side, we have a standard, top-of-the-line iPhone. On the other, a hypothetical future iPhone equipped with a vapor chamber cooling system. To get a full picture, we need to test this from a few different angles. First, synthetic benchmarks. We'd use Geekbench 6 for raw CPU power and 3DMark Wildlife Extreme for the GPU. The key here would be the 3DMark stress test, which runs a demanding graphical loop for 20 minutes to simulate a long gaming session. It gives you a stability score, showing how much the performance drops off over time from heat, a perfect test for measuring throttling. Second, a real-world gaming test. What better game than Genshin Impact? It's a beautiful but notoriously demanding game that can make even powerful phones struggle. We'd imagine a 30-minute session on both devices with maxed-out graphics, tracking the frames per second, FPS, and the phone's external temperature. And third, a pro workflow test. For content creators, we could test a 10-minute 4K video export in an app like LumaFusion. This is a sustained, CPU-heavy task that's a great real-world test outside of gaming. The goal is to gather clear data to show what happens when heat is no longer the main limiting factor. Section 3. The expected results: synthetic benchmarks. So what would we expect to see? Let's start with Geekbench 6. On a single run, the scores would likely be almost identical. Both the standard and hypothetical liquid-cooled iPhone should deliver great peak performance. The real story would appear after running the test 3 times in a row. With the standard iPhone, you'd expect the score to drop by about 15% on the second run, and by the third, it could be down nearly 25% from its peak as the phone gets warm and throttling kicks in. With a vapor chamber, however, the theory is that it would be a different story. Its score might only dip by 3% on the second run, still holding over 95% of its original performance on the third. it would likely only be slightly warm to the touch. Now for the 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme Stress Test. This is where the difference could be staggering. A standard iPhone often starts strong, but then its performance falls off, finishing with a stability score somewhere in the 60–70% range. This means its GPU performance could drop by over 30% by the end. The hypothetical liquid-cooled iPhone, however, could be incredibly consistent. It's plausible it could finish the 20-minute test with a stability score of 97% or higher. That would be a massive difference, proving the GPU can run near its maximum potential for the entire time with almost no throttling. These numbers, though theoretical, paint a clear picture of how much performance is left on the table due to heat. Section 4. The expected results. Real-world gaming benchmarks are one thing, but what about actually playing a game? If we fired up Genshin Impact on both phones at max settings, aiming for 60 FPS, here's what would likely happen. For the first 5 or 10 minutes, both phones would probably hold a smooth 60 FPS. Then, the familiar story would start on the standard iPhone. The back of the device would get hot, potentially over 42 degrees Celsius. The screen would likely dim, a classic sign the phone is trying to manage heat, and the frame rate would start to drop into the 50s, then the 40s during intense moments, with noticeable stutter. Now, imagine the liquid-cooled iPhone. At the 10-minute mark, it could still be locked at a perfect 60 FPS. At 20 minutes, still a solid 60. Even after 30 minutes, it's conceivable it would finish without any major drops. That would be a night and day difference. The back of the phone might be warm, but at a much more reasonable 35 degrees Celsius. For any serious mobile gamer, this isn't just an improvement, it's a total game changer. Section 5. The unseen benefit. Battery life and longevity. The performance gains seem obvious, but there's another, arguably more important, benefit that you won't see on a chart. The impact on your iPhone's long-term health. Heat is the #1 enemy of lithium-ion batteries. Every time your iPhone gets hot, it speeds up the chemical degradation inside the battery. That's why a phone that's a year or two old doesn't hold a charge as well as it did when it was new. By keeping the phone consistently cooler, a vapor chamber system would be actively protecting your battery. Lower operating temperatures mean less stress, which means the battery should retain its health for much longer. This could mean going significantly longer before you start to notice battery degradation or feel the need for a replacement. This benefit extends to the whole device. Heat is bad for the processor and all the other delicate components inside your iPhone. Running cooler doesn't just mean better performance today. It means less wear and tear over time, potentially extending the lifespan of your phone. This technology seems like it could finally address one of the iPhone's longest-standing compromises. But what do you think? Is this a feature you've been waiting for, or is it overkill for what you do? Let me know in the comments what you would do with all that extra performance. And if you're into tech deep dives that push the limits, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's next. Conclusion. So, will liquid cooling take the iPhone to the next level? Based on everything we know about this technology, all signs point to a massive yes. It wouldn't just be a small, incremental upgrade. It could fundamentally change what an iPhone is capable of. Our thought experiment, based on how these systems work, shows a clear path to reducing thermal throttling, which means higher, more consistent performance. For gamers, that means a smooth, high frame rate experience. For professionals, it means faster video exports and a more responsive phone under heavy use. And maybe most importantly, by solving the heat problem, it could also help with the long-term issues of battery degradation and component wear. This tech enhances not just the power of the device, but its longevity as well. For hardcore mobile gamers, content creators, and anyone who wants to get every bit of performance out of their phone for years to come, vapor chamber cooling is the key that could finally let the iPhone run free. Smash the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more tech challenges, future experiments, and real talk from TechWave 65.